"Welcome all," bellowed Camling, greatly relishing the way his voice echoed to the very heavens, "to this, the historic theatre of Crease. In the many centuries since its construction, it can rarely have seen so momentous an event as that which will shortly be played out before your fortunate eyes." Could eyes be fortunate independently of their owners? This question gave Camling an instant's pause before he dismissed it. He could not allow himself to be distracted. This was his moment. The torchlit bowl crammed with onlookers, the street beyond heaving with those on tiptoe for a look, the trees on the valley side above even carrying cargoes of intrepid observers in their upper branches, all hanging upon his every word. Noted hotelier he might have been, but he was without doubt a sad loss to the performing arts. "A fight, my friends and neighbours, and what a fight! A contest of strength and guile between two worthy champions, to be humbly refereed by myself, Leonard Camling, as a respected neutral party and long-established leading citizen of this community." He thought he heard someone call, "Cockling," but ignored it. "A contest to settle a dispute between two parties over a claim according to mining law." "Get the fuck on with it!" someone shouted. There was a scattering of laughs, boos, and jeers. Camling gave a long pause, chin raised, and treated the savages to a lesson in cultured gravity. The type of lesson he had been hoping Josef Lessek might administer. What a farce that had turned out to be. "Standing for Papa Ring, a man who needs no introduction." "Why give him one, then?" More laughter. "Who has forged a dread name for himself across the fighting pits, cages, and circles of the near and far countries ever since he left his native north. A man undefeated in 22 encounters. Glamour Golden!" Golden shouldered his way into the circle, stripped to the waist, his huge body smeared with grease to frustrate an opponent's grasp, great slabs of muscle glistening white by torchlight, and reminding Camling of the giant albino slugs he sometimes saw in his cellar and was irrationally afraid of. With his skull shaved, the Northman's luxuriant moustache looked even more of an absurd affectation, but the volume of the crowd's bellows only increased. A breathless frenzy had descended upon them, and they no doubt would have cheered an albino slug if they had thought it might bleed for their entertainment. "And standing for the mayor, his opponent, Lamb." Much less enthusiastic cheering as the second fighter stepped into the circle to a last frantic round of betting. He was likewise shaved and greased, his body so covered with a multitude of scars that, even if he had no fame as a fighter, his familiarity with violence was not to be doubted. Camling leaned close to whisper, "Just that for a name?" "Good as another," said the old Northman, without removing his steady gaze from his opponent. No doubt everyone considered him the underdog. Certainly Camling had almost discounted him until that very moment. The older, smaller, leaner man, the gambler's odds considerably against him, but Camling noticed something in his eye that gave him pause, an eager look, as though he had an awful hunger, and Golden was the meal. The bigger man's face, by contrast, held a trace of doubt as Camling ushered the two together in the centre of the circle. "Do I know you?" he called over the baying of the audience. "What's your real name?" Lamb stretched his neck out to one side and then the other. "Maybe it'll come to you." Camling held one hand high. "May the best man win!" he shrieked. Over the sudden roar he heard Lamb say, "It's the worst man wins these." This would be Golden's last fight, that much he knew. They circled each other, footwork, step and shuffle, each feeling out the other, The wild noise of the crowd and their shaken fists and twisted faces pushed off to one side. No doubt they were eager for the fight to start. They didn't realize that oftentimes the fight was won and lost here, in the slow movements before the fighters even touched. By the dead, though, Golden was tired. Failures and regrets dragging after him like chains on a swimmer, heavier with each day, with each breath. This had to be his last fight. He'd heard the far country was a place where men could find their dreams and come searching for a way to claim back all he'd lost, but this was all he'd found. Glamour Golden, mighty war chief, hero of Olensand, who'd stood tall in the songs and on the battlefield, admired and feared in equal measure, rolling in the mud for the amusement of morons. A tilt of the waist and a dip of the shoulder, a couple of lazy ranging swings, getting the other man's measure. He moved well, this lamb, whatever his age. He was no stranger to this business. There was a snap and steadiness to his movements, and he wasted no effort. Golden wondered what his failures had been, what his regrets. What dream had he come chasing after into this circle? "Leave him alive, if you can," Ring had said, which only showed how little he understood, in spite of his endless bragging about his word. There were no choices in a fight like this, life and death on the leveller's scales. There was no place for mercy, no place for doubts. He could see in Lamb's eyes that he knew it too. Once two men step into the circle, nothing beyond its edge can matter, past or future. Things fall the way they fall. Golden had seen enough. He squeezed his teeth together and rushed across the circle. The old man dodged well, but Golden still caught him by the ear and followed with a heavy left in the ribs, felt the thud right up his arm, warming every joint. Lamb struck back, but Golden brushed it off, and as quickly as they'd come together they were apart, circling again, watching, a gust swirling around the theatre and dragging out the torch flames. He could take a punch, this old man, still moving calm and steady, showing no pain. Golden might have to break him down piece by piece, use his reach, but that was well enough. He was warming to the task. His breath came faster, and he growled along with it, his face finding a fighting snarl, sucking in strength and pushing out doubt, all his shame and disappointment made tinder for his anger. Golden slapped his palms together hard, feinted right, then hissed as he darted in, faster and sharper than before, catching the old man with two more long punches, bloodying his bent nose, staggering him and dancing away before he could think of throwing back, the stone bowl ringing with encouragements and insults and fresh odds in a dozen languages. Golden settled to the work. He had the reach and the weight and the youth, but he took nothing for granted. He would be cautious. He would make sure. This would be his last fight, after all. Golden had bloodied the old man's face up something fierce. Drizzle was streaking through the light about the torches, cool on his forehead, but he was hot inside now, doubts banished. He had Lamb's measure, and even the blood in his mouth tasted like victory. This would be his last fight. Back to the north with Ring's money, and win back his lost honour and his lost children, cut his revenge out of Kerm Ironhead and Black Calder. The thought of those hated names and faces bringing up the fury in a sudden blaze. Golden roared, and the crowd roared with him, carried him across the circle as if on the crest of a wave. The old man pushed away one punch and slipped under another, found a hold on Golden's arm, and they slapped and twisted, fingers wriggling for a grip, hands slippery with grease and drizzle, feet shuffling for advantage. Golden strained and heaved, and finally, with a bellow, got Lamb off his feet, but the old man hooked his leg as he went down, and they crashed together onto the stones, the crowd leaping up in joy as they fell. Golden was on top. He tried to get a hand around the old man's throat, fumbled with a notch out of his ear, tried to rip at it, but it was too slippery, tried to inch his hand up onto Lamb's face so he could get his thumbnail in his eye, the way he had with that big miner back in the spring, and of a sudden his head was dragged down and there was a burning, tugging pain in his mouth. He bellowed and twisted and growled, clawed at Lamb's wrist with his nails, and, with a stinging and ripping right through his lip and into his gums, he tore himself free and thrashed away. As Lamb rolled up, he saw the old man had yellow hairs caught in one fist, and Golden realized he'd torn half his moustache out. There was laughter in the crowd, but all he heard was the laughter years behind him as he trudged from Scarling's Hall and into exile. The rage came up white-hot, and Golden charged in, shrieking. No thoughts, except the need to smash Lamb apart with his fists. He caught the old man square in the face and sent him staggering right out of the circle, folk on the front row of stone benches scattering like starlings. Golden came after him, spewing curses, raining blows, fists knocking Lamb left and right like he was made of rags. The old man's hands dropped, face slack, eyes glassy, and Golden knew the moment was come. He stepped in, swinging with all his strength, and landed the father of all punches right on the point of Lamb's jaw. He watched the old man stumble, fists dangling, waiting for Lamb's knees to buckle so he could spring on top of him and put an end to it. But Lamb didn't fall. He tottered back a pace or two into the circle and stood swaying, blood drooling from his open mouth, and his face tipped into shadow. Then Golden caught something over the thunder of the crowd, soft and low, but there was no mistaking it. The old man was laughing. Golden stood, chest heaving, legs weak, arms heavy from his efforts, and he felt a chill doubt wash over him, because he wasn't sure he could hit a man any harder than that. "Who are you?" he roared, fists aching like he'd been beating a tree. Lamb gave a smile like an open grave, and stuck out his red tongue and smeared blood from it across his cheek in long streaks. He held up his left fist and gently uncurled it, so he looked at Golden, eyes wide and weeping wet like two black tar pits through the gap where his middle finger used to be. The crowd had fallen eerily quiet, and Golden's doubt turned to a sucking dread, because he finally knew the old man's name. "By the dead," he whispered. "It can't be." But he knew it was. However fast, however strong, however fearsome you make yourself, there's always someone faster, stronger, more fearsome, and the more you fight, the sooner you'll meet him. No one cheats the great leveler forever. And now Glamour Golden felt the sweat turn cold on him, and the fire inside guttered out and left only ashes. And he knew this would be his last fight indeed.